this video, we're going to take a look at basic rigging. Rigging is the art of adding controls to animate an object. We could rig a car or we could rig a character. Adding those controls simply makes it easier to animate the object in question. A rig can be incredibly complex with a ton of automated features, or it could be super simple. Now, of course, in this case, we're going to go with the super simple and add just a real basic light rig to our crow here. One of the biggest parts of rigging is to stay organized. So the first thing I'm going to do here is place the crow geometry onto a layer. This will help me control different parts of the geometry's display, which will enable me to select things easier. So I'm going to select the geometry and go over into the layer editor underneath the channel box and click this icon, the furthest to the right, which will generate a new layer and automatically add my current selection to that layer. I'm going to double click the word layer 1 and we're just going to give this a new name. Let's call it crow underscore geo. And I'm also using all capital letters there just as a way to keep things organized. Now I can go ahead and click the V for visibility to turn off that geometry. This makes it real easy for me to see my character's skeleton. I'm going to leave that off here just for a little bit. And you can already see that I have some circles out here that I'm going to use as control handles. By adding these circles, I'm avoiding having to select the IK handles themselves. So for instance, you can see here on the crow's leg, if I select the circle and hit W, I can then move the character's leg. And I don't have to try and find that IK handle, which is small and kind of buried behind the character's own skeleton. This nerve circle is a much darker color and it sits out there. It's just more prominent. Now we can make changes. Maya allows us to customize just about everything. We could make the color of the IK handle different. We can even increase the size. But it still doesn't change the fact that it's a T or a crosshair, and that's just very difficult for us to grab onto. Of course, I've already got some of this rig already started, but we're just going to go over the exact same process I used in order to add this type of handle to the character's leg. Let's look first at the crow's head. Now we could use forward IK, which is simply grabbing the joint and moving it. And typically with joints, we're not going to translate them. We're only going to rotate them. But again, the joint is very similar to the IK handle. It can kind of be a pain to select. It's going to be inside my character's geometry. And if I have multiple characters, I'm going to have multiple joints, and it might be difficult to see which joints belong to who. If I create unique control handles, like this simple circle, I could avoid all of that. So this is the part and the art of actually creating a rig. So I'm going to add just a basic setup here, and we'll add this handle as a connection to my joint rotation. Now first, I do want to make sure that the rotation value is set to 0, and it is, which was all part of actually creating our skeleton. We always want to make sure that those are set to 0. To attach this, I'm going to select my nerves circle, and then hold Shift and select the joint. And I'll go to Constrain, and we'll open up the options for Orient. Now right at the top there, I have Maintain Offset. It looks as if the joint and the circle are occupying the same centers. For all we know, they're rotated the same. They both have 0, right? I can look at the circle, its rotates are 0. My joint, its rotates are 0. But if you remember, joints are calculated in local space, meaning that they look at their parent. So this rotation could be completely different than this rotation. Let's find out. I'm going to select the nerve circle, then select my joint, and I'm going to constrain the two. So this circle's rotation will lock the joint's rotation or orient the joint's rotation so it matches it. And we'll choose Apply. And look at that. It definitely is in a different space as it rotated it so that the joint would match the circle. And it had to do so by rotating it both in the X and the Y. Not what we want. And we'll just come back and see that's why we don't want it, because we just snapped our poor bird's neck. So let's undo that. And this time choose Maintain Offset. So now it'll add this constraint without affecting it, essentially. So we'll choose Add. Now the neck is at 0. My circle is still at 0 as well, and my bird is happy. Now with that connected, I can then select the circle and rotate my crow's neck, or rotate his head. Okay, so how did we get to that point? We need to generate a circle. And now let's add a brand new control handle to the crow's body. And that's going to go right to the root, and that's going to be this joint right here. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create that NURBS circle. Now I could just duplicate one that I already have, but we're going to do this from scratch. Choose Create, NURBS Primitive, Circle. And I want to scale it so that it's larger than my character's body so that I can see it. Now I also want to snap it by using the Snap to Point feature. And I'm just going to hold V on the keyboard, V as in Victor, to snap it to that joint. Now snapping it up there can be a little difficult because all these vertices allow me to snap to them as well. Well, we could kind of avoid that. Again, just by using that layer, we can just shut our geometry off and make sure we have a nice solid snap there to the character's root. We'll turn that back on. And I don't want to immediately just go in and say, well, let's just make it huge so I can see it and select it easily. We want to keep them proportioned to what they are and keep them tight to the character's body. That way they're not flying off in every direction in our scene and again overlapping into other characters' control handles. Now I want to scale this one up just a bit more so that I can see it if I'm looking at the character from behind. That should be good right there. Now that joint definitely is rotated differently as we learned from the character's head. So I'm going to select the circle, make sure it's at 0, but I have scale transforms there. So let's freeze its transforms, modify, freeze transformations. That's also going to get rid of the translates. While we're here, let's rename it. And then I'll hold Shift, select the character's root, go to Constrain, open the options here, Maintain Offset. Let's add that. Now I can grab that handle and rotate my character's body. Very nice. But we want to add a little bit of an extra feature here that we didn't add to the character's head, and that's the ability for our crow to kind of crouch up and down. We can do it all in this same handle. We're going to just repeat the process. I'm going to select my curve, Shift select the root, go to Constrain, but this time we're going to add a point constraint. Again, I'm going to maintain offset. And now we definitely have to because we know the joints have transformation values. Maintain offset, add. Now I can select my curve. It's all at 0, which is nice. And now I can move the crow up and down or rotate, all through that single handle. When I'm done, if I want to return the crow back to its original position, I can select all those values and just zero them out. Now, ultimately, once we have all of those controls set up, we want them to be on a single root so that we can move the character around. All I need to do is select all of these handles and just make them children of this master handle that's sitting down here on the floor. And now I can lift that up. I still need to include the feet there, of course, but the rest of the body and everything is coming right along with it. Now, one little other trick we could do here, and let's just make it happen here first. Let's kind of break things. If I rotate the body, notice what happens to that neck handle. It's no longer sitting where the neck was. Well, it's because we never attached it. So if I undo and just come back, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to attach the curve to the joint. So the curve is going to control the rotation of the neck, but the neck joint is going to control the position of my curve. So I'm going to select the joint, hold Shift, select the curve, constrain, and we're going to add point, maintain offset, add. Now, when I select that body again and rotate, the handle comes with it. That's what we want. And then I can select and rotate. Perfect. That's a nice brief overview of rigging. Rigging is huge, and it is an art.